for you. Internet gods will be kind. Yes, Michael. Oh, you're muted.
Liz, you have my sympathy because my car broke down today, and it must be the spirit of the times or something.
Okay. Shall I call the meeting to order? We're waiting for a few people. Do we know? Okay. It is 5 o'clock, and I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Advisory Board meeting number 7, held tonight, March 22, between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. And I'd like to welcome everyone. Staff, can you begin the roll call, please?
Yes. Commander McDonald.
I am here.
Officer Nunn. No. Shelby Rahala.
Yes, here.
Michael O'Brien.
Here.
Abdirahim Mohammed and Emilio Calderon both messaged us in advance that they wouldn't be joining us this evening. Liz Newton.
I am here.
John Trin. Let's see, John. Jimmy Brown.
I'm here.
And Lee Landers. I don't see Lee. Patty Lofgren.
I am here.
Justin Lowe.
I am here.
Annie Rauda.
Here.
Valerie Sasaki.
Here.
And John Gearhart is still on a leave of absence, and Jeff Mott. Okay. And then just to let everyone know, this is, as always, being recorded and live streamed. And to me, that is roll call.
All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to meeting number 7. Before we get into our meeting, I'd like to invite all of you to join me in centering our conversations for tonight. I'm going to read a statement, and the statement begins, "Today, we convene to listen and learn from each other through reflection and discussion. As we evaluate and improve our public safety practices, we elevate the voices and experiences of the communities who have been and continue to be disproportionately impacted by inequitable systems. We thank all those who have advocated and worked on dismantling injustices in Tigard and our broader community. We build off their efforts to create more equitable and just outcomes for people of all backgrounds and abilities. The purpose of our meeting is to develop our understanding of current public safety structures, practices, and procedures, identify and eliminate institutional racism within Tigard's public institutions by centering our equity and racial justice. We will bring forward the concerns and experiences of ourselves and our community. Bring forward recommendations to city leadership to improve the lived experiences of all people in Tigard. So now we will do a breathing exercise together, and feel free to turn off your cameras for this portion. Close your eyes or gaze softly downward. Feel the chair under your legs. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out your mouth. Feel your hands in your lap. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out your mouth. Feel your feet on the ground. Breathe in deeply through your nose and out your mouth. Slowly open your eyes and begin to breathe normally. Thank you all for participating in creating this space with me and with the group. And now I'd like to hand it over to Kim for our icebreaker.
Thank you for leading us in that, Jimmy. So our icebreaker, we have a very full agenda for this evening. So we are going to do what we've been typically doing with the breakout rooms, but tonight we're just going to do one. And Tammy, I think, has our icebreaker question.
So in the spirit of a spring break, what's one of your biggest memories you have from spring break and why? It could be good, bad, or otherwise, but one of your biggest memories around spring break.
All right, sending everybody to the rooms. All right. We almost have everybody back. All right. Thank you, everybody. Jimmy, back to you.
Jimmy, you unmute it.
There we go. Welcome back. I hope everybody had a good time in their icebreaker sessions. We have a couple of minutes before we move into our public comment piece. So does anybody like to volunteer what their favorite spring break memory and their why? Okay, I'll do mine. I have a couple of minutes. So it all started. No, this just deals with when our kids were younger, we would go down to Lincoln City for just to hang out for spring break. And they have a swimming pool down there, wonderful swimming facility. And we would take the kids there, and they had been going for a good 5-6 years. So they actually knew young kids that were there too. And the kids had always wanted me to go up on the 20-meter board to jump off. And I'd always resisted because I think I have a thing about heights and water. But I finally went, and I get up to the board, and I get a chance to look out over the pool area. And it was way too high, and it was way too deep. And it was like, oh no, I am not going to jump off this thing. And there was this little 7 or 8-year-old boy behind me, and I'm standing there thinking, do I really want to do this? And he looks at me and he says, are you going to jump off the board? And I turned around and looked at him in a rather adult fashion. I said, no, I'm not. I walked off the board and walked on, excuse me, getting away from doing that. And to this day, my kids will talk about how Dad didn't want to jump off the 20-meter board. And I'm like, what do I have to prove? You know, I have nothing to prove. I can come up here and then I can walk off. And that's exactly what I did to this day. Okay. Seeing and hearing no other memories of our spring break, I'd like to ask if there's any person or persons that have signed up or submitted any written testimony. Okay, well, I would like to thank any of the community members that are joining us tonight via the screen, and let you all know that public comments are vital to the board's mission, and we welcome community feedback on our work. If you have comments for the board, written testimony must be submitted by 10 a.m. the day of the scheduled meeting. If you would like to speak at our meeting, please email our staff at eduardo@tigard-oregon.gov. And any additional details and instructions are also available at www.tigard-oregon.gov/PSAB. I do believe that Miss Liz, we had a wonderful comment from Alex at Portland State. And I read that comment and was just incredibly impressed by his words. If you have a couple of words that you would like to share with us with that.
Sure, I was blown away too, Jimmy. I agree with you. He actually also sent me his notes, the notes that he made in the meeting, which were just kind of an expansion of what his letter said. And I had another exchange with him, and so he may be watching us. I don't know. He was just very he was so gracious and shared his notes with me, and So I talked with him a little bit more about what we were trying to accomplish and really encouraged him to participate and to contact me at any time. But yeah, I sent it on to Eduardo because I wanted you all to see it. He was writing me because he needed his permission slip signed, but it was really great to connect with him. So thanks for bringing that up. And Eduardo, I'm assuming that if folks that are listening want to see that, they can access that on the PSAB website. Is that correct?
Yes, I can upload it with the public comment.
Great, thank you. Thanks for doing that.
Wonderful. Yes, I was just impressed. Part of it is I remember myself and as well my children when they were in college and the times that they had to be involved in something from a public perspective, and having read similar comments from them once they were able to engage in the actual event. It may have been going to a city council hearing or some other public meeting. And it just gave them such a impression of what public service is all about. And especially when it has such a dramatic effect for what we're trying to do here in the city of Tigard. So I was very impressed, and I hope you tell him that, his words rang very true. At least I know to me they did. So we have an introduction to a new municipal court judge, and I'd like to call on Judge Michael O'Brien to introduce the new municipal court judge. Michael.
Good evening. Some of you know last week the Tigard City Council appointed Emily Oberdorfer to take over my position when I went into semi-retirement in January. She is now the presiding judge of the Tigard Municipal Court, and she brings with her a lot of experience in the metro region's criminal defense community, where she's very well known. And she's also been a pro tem judge in our court for a number of years. So she comes to us as no stranger. I was hoping she'd be able to make some introductory remarks. And I think Eduardo and I sent her the link to join the meeting. I know she's streaming the meeting. Maybe she'll be able to join us at some point. But I want to welcome Judge Oberdorfer, and I'm sorry that she's not with us to say a few words, unless she has been able to log in the last minute or so.
No, I don't see her online.
Sorry about that, but maybe we'll be able to let her introduce herself at a future meeting. Thanks, Jimmy.
Okay, thank you, Judge. So I'd like to welcome our favorite chief, and Chief McAlpine is going to give us her update. Looks like we're moving right along with our agenda, so feel comfortable, Chief, to walk us down the path of what's happening now.
All right, well, thank you. For those listening in, I'm Chief Kathy McAlpine. I'm here to actually make my first ask of the Public Safety Advisory Board. But before I get into that, I would just like to take a moment to recognize our Asian community, both in Tigard and far and wide, on what they may or may not be going through. Although we said in Atlanta, they did not believe it was a hate crime, it still shocked the country, and it really highlighted some of the things our Asian brothers and sisters are going through. And with several of you on the board that, of our representing our Asian community, I just want to, send out my heartfelt support for all of you. And again, to our Tigard community and the greater area. So with that though, I am, myself and City Manager Steve Reimer, who I know all of you got a chance to meet, we are doing this jointly together for an ask. And as you'll hear from Sergeant Erickson a little bit about our current body worn and dash camera program, currently nearly all marked patrol vehicles have been equipped with these cameras for over 15 years, the dash cameras. Let me lower my thing so I can see all my PowerPoint. Limited deployment of body worn cameras since 2009. Currently, we just have our K9, our motor officers, our school resource officers, and the community service officers. Next slide, please. And again, equipping officers with body-worn camera is a policing best practice. We heard especially large and wide from the community after the incident with George Floyd, a demand for body-worn cameras within the Tigard Police Department. Dash cameras and body-worn cameras have outlived their useful life and are in need of replacement. So our dash cameras are actually at a rate of failure because they are 15 years old. And again, our body-worn cameras are not the most current models. And so this is the time to decide what path that we would like to go on. Next slide, please. So in talking with the city manager, kind of going over our current program, much like you will hear in a few minutes, we were gearing up to do an ask for the next fiscal year, which, you know, budget preparations are starting now, would go in front of the budget committee and be ready for an approved budget in July 1st. The city manager felt that this was such an important request that he has opted to actually have the council review this in the third quarter supplemental of this year, which will happen, I believe, April 13th. So we will go to the council with a budget request for the expansion of a body-worn camera program to include all sworn personnel and community service officers. We'd like to replace the failing dash cameras for our marked units, upgrade our tasers to modern integrated technology. And again, Sergeant Erickson will talk a little bit about that. And then for the budget impacts, it's an additional $165,000 average annual cost. So we have $119,000 in existing for cameras, tasers, whatnot. So this would be an increase of $165,000 each year to the general fund. Next slide, please. So after you've received your introductory about 40 minutes with Sergeant Erickson, and we do the question and answering, I'm going to come back to you again with my recommendations or my ask of this board, that the Public Safety Advisory Board endorse the replacement and expansion of the body-worn and dash camera program in this fiscal year. And then recognizing that you want to talk about policies and how body-worn cameras are deployed, I would ask that the Public Safety Advisory Board continues their review of the city's body-worn and dash camera policy simultaneously with the new equipment purchase. In other words, this could take us a little while and not to stop the momentum of being able to purchase this equipment in the April 13th, should the council approve, we want to continue getting that equipment to us as soon as possible. So those are the things I'm going to come back to you and ask after Sergeant Erickson gets done and after you've had a chance to ask your questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Sergeant Erickson.
Well, thank you, Chief, and good evening, everybody. Give me a second here to fire up and share my screen with everyone. I hope everybody sees the splash page there. Please let me know if we're not seeing that.
No, you're sharing. You're good.
Looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight and for what you're doing for our police department and the community. I really look forward to this conversation that we're going to have tonight. As Chief said, I'm Sergeant Lee Erickson. I've been with the Tigard Police Department for about 17 years now. I'm currently assigned as our traffic safety team supervisor. And in that role, I oversee the majority of our body cameras that we have out on deployment with our motorcycle officers and our community service officers. But my familiarity with body cameras goes back almost 12 years now with a lot of the training I do at the national level and within the department. As we go through this, I'll be presenting some information to you. I would ask that we hold questions until the end. I don't want to miss anybody and have you sitting there with your hand raised for a really long time and get frustrated. So if we could just hold the questions until the end, that'd be great. So this presentation is here to provide some information for you to consider whether or not to endorse the plan to expand and replace our body cameras and dash camera systems as we move forward. So some of the questions to think about as we're going through this is, should we spend the money, the time, and the effort to expand our body-worn camera program? What are the expectation of Tigard community members to record law enforcement encounters? And does our current video recording technology and practices meet those expectations? What are the benefits and limitations of the body-worn cameras? And I'll highlight some of that information for you and show you some examples as we go. And then what are the potential impacts do body-worn cameras have on the city of Tigard and the police department in general? So what are body cameras? They are, simply put, small digital recorder systems that officers can wear on their uniforms. This is an example of the ones we currently have out in the field with our K9 officers. Generally, body-worn cameras are worn mid-chest area, so to record the direction that the officer is facing when they're during an encounter in the public. But some can be worn in other areas. For instance, our motors officers have ones that are mounted to their helmet to give a more point of view option for recording video. And that's specifically for them to try and capture traffic violations that they're investigating when they're out in the field. If the camera is just mounted in mid-chest, it might not catch that direction that the officer is looking. Current market offers numerous features and capabilities in different sizes. And so we're considering which ones we want to go with and the different features we want to include with the purchase. Sorry, I'm going fast here. So when we look at the data that's available to us, one of the most recent polls that we can find from the Cato Institution was a 2016 poll that said 74% of people believe body-worn cameras protect both police officers that wear them and citizens who interact with the police. And further in that study, they found that 89% of people support the police wearing body-worn cameras to record videos of their interactions. Currently, we have about 10 body-worn cameras in use amongst our officers. And as the chief highlighted in her information, those are primarily with our K9 officers, our traffic safety officers, our school resource officers, and community service officers. Expectations of citizens. What we've learned so far is it's better evidence collection, better police public interactions, creating efficiencies in the police work. And we've had some success with the current body-worn camera systems that we have out there. And I'll show a video towards the end here that kind of highlights how those video cameras work and what they record for us. So some of the benefits of body-worn cameras. Again, this is from some of the research that's been done out there. And this was kind of a survey of other studies that had been done. So it's better transparency for the public, for police officers, and for criminal trials. Increased civility. Both public and police officers have a heightened awareness of being recorded and tend to act more civil. Quicker resolutions, partly due to the fact that those interactions are being recorded, so there's clearer evidence available to us. There's corroborating evidence that captures both physical, or that can corroborate both the physical evidence and statements taken when we're investigating something. And then there's training opportunities. We can use the videos that we record to find ways to improve performance in the field for all of our officers and use them as examples of good things or ways we can make improvements on the way we service the public. Recording police public interactions from a perspective that's closer to the officers. So it gives us more defense and more evidence in our defense if we need that, as well as show a little bit of what our point of view is seen when we're conducting our work in the field. It doesn't give 100% accurate perspective, but it does help relay more of our perspective. Evidence captured by these cameras are often better than in-car video because the camera goes with the officer wherever they're going. So unfortunately, dash cameras are stuck with where the car is stopped and facing, whereas with the body-worn cameras, we can take that with us as we go. And again, they tend to lead to better outcomes, according to the research that we've seen. And finally, research shows body-worn cameras have a direct effect on lowering use of force incidences and complaints. So one of the studies we looked at was a study done in the city of Phoenix by the university, or Arizona State University. And what they had done in this study was give a precinct in the Phoenix Police Department body cameras in one area of operation, and the adjacent area of operation were not given body-worn cameras, so they could see what the differences between the two as officers went through the course of 30 months. So they did a 30-month study on this and to see how it worked. And they bought 56 body-worn cameras to do this, gave it to, like I said, one area of operation, and then the adjacent area of operation was the control. And what they found at the end of it was there was low compliance with activation when required by the policy. It peaked at about 42% compliance about a month into the study, but was down to 13% towards the end of the study. There's higher compliance for domestic violence incidents at about 47.5% on average, compared to, and also calls of violent offenses at about 38.7%. Backup officers were more likely to activate their cameras at 37% of the time compared to the primary officers. And we feel that part of this is, unfortunately, the study didn't go into a lot of detail or analysis as to why compliance was so low, but it sounded like what had been done was they had purchased the cameras, they had provided training to the officers at the start of the study on how they work and how to use them, and then didn't revisit that. So we feel that with a robust policy, constant training, and then audits of usage, we can correct these kinds of errors to achieve better compliance with our usage of body-worn cameras compared to what the study showed. They did see a time to process cases. So from the date of the incident to when it was finished in court, increased about 35 days. It went up to 78 days to conclusion of prosecution, as compared to 43 days where the body camera was not used. But again, there's more evidence, there's more information there to process. And so it created longer timelines to conduct those prosecutions. They did find that there was a significant decrease in the number of official complaints filed against officers who were wearing the body-worn cameras as compared to the control group. So again, these were two different groups in the same precinct operating in adjacent areas of the city. And those who were wearing the body-worn cameras saw a 22% or 22.6% decrease in official complaints, as compared to a 10.6% increase for the group that was next door, and a 45.1% increase across the department. They also were really interested in domestic violence investigations from start to finish, and how these body-worn cameras affected the outcomes of those. And what they saw was an increase in the cases initiated, 40.9% of cases with the control camera or with the body-worn cameras, as compared to 34% of the cameras, or of the group without cameras. So these were cases that were referred to the district attorney's office, and the district attorney's office decided to prosecute. So a 6% increase for those wearing the body-worn cameras over those. Of those, there's about a 12% increase in the number of or the times when charges were filed. So 38% of the time charges were filed for those wearing body-worn cameras, 26% for the control group. Prosecution was started, again, at double the rate. So 12.7% of the time when body-worn camera video was available, they went to prosecution, versus 6.2% without body-worn camera. And then the real kicker is these, whereas pled guilty or found guilty, you're looking at 4 times as many times pled guilty for body-worn camera video as compared to when it was not available. And then 5 times as many times they were found guilty as compared to when body-worn camera was not available. So our current state of equipment, we're on our 2nd generation of in-car video, and the current system is 10 years old. It's right now we have audio recorders that aren't working, and to the point where we've had to stop relying on the portable audio recorders with the video in our system, because they just don't work most of the time. the system or this program goes back even further to about 15 years ago, where we were one of the first in Washington County to have a full patrol fleet equipped with body-worn cameras. So we have a lot of history and understanding with digital video recording and how to use it. The current system we have requires on-site servers for uploading and storage of the video. So that requires IT support to manage and maintain that infrastructure on site. And as we talked about before, we do have a limited deployment for body-worn cameras with our canines, our school resource officers, our traffic safety officers, and our community service officers. And one of the benefits with our current body-worn camera systems are they're stored securely on the cloud. So it reduces the burden on our IT infrastructure, as well as the time it takes for us to manage that digital evidence in-house. Replacement systems that we're looking at. We want to look at new in-car video for patrol vehicles. We want to look at body-worn cameras for all sworn staff and our community service officers. And the systems that we're looking at, we want to have secure storage in the cloud for all of it. So not just the body-worn cameras, but also for the video that's in the cloud, or the video coming from our patrol cars. And we want to make sure that that video is all integrated. So when an officer has an incident that starts with a patrol car driving to a scene, the video from the in-car video is recorded. And then when they get out of their car, it's integrated so that it picks up from the body-worn camera perspective. And then if we make an arrest back to the car, the recording from the back of the vehicle is integrated so that when we produce something for anybody to look at, it's all one package that shows a seamless transition from one point of view to the next and back as we need to for the details of an incident. We're also looking at body-worn cameras that have integration with other tools so that there's some automation built into the systems, and it doesn't require officers' conscious thought or efforts to activate their cameras. When certain events happen, like when police car lights come on or when tasers are activated, the body cameras come on automatically for them without having to think about it. Agencies currently using body-worn cameras around us include the Beaverton Police Department, Hillsborough Police Department, the Oregon State Police, the City of Sherwood, and the Washington County Sheriff's Office. There's a couple different kinds of systems out there that they're using, but all these agencies have full deployment with their sworn staff for body-worn cameras. So we'll get into 3 examples of use. I'll warn you ahead of time. Some of these have audio and some of them do not. It just depends on the systems that they were recorded on and buffering and things like that. So they will, sometimes you'll hear audio and sometimes you won't. It's not missing or anything like that, but it just may not be any audio that goes along with the video that we're watching. So this first example is from another agency, and there's an officer on scene trying to assist a person who's intoxicated and requested help. And as he's there talking with this gentleman, another apparently intoxicated individual comes up to them and interferes a little bit with what the officer is trying to do. And so this video is just to highlight the perspective that body-worn cameras have. And those are the ones that are mounted on the mid-chest and not the point of view. But again, it just kind of shows the point of view of an officer's body camera video in an incident.
Lee, I believe this video is supposed to have audio. Is that correct?
That is correct. Are we not hearing any?
We're not hearing it.
Okay, I probably messed something up somewhere.
You probably didn't click the share sound when you shared your screen.
That's probably it.
Yeah, so if you just stop the share and then restart it and then click the 2 buttons on the bottom left-hand side.
Yes, thank you. I forgot that. Okay, let me take it back to the beginning here.
name is Sergeant Canberg.
Sergeant?
Yes.
Sergeant what?
Canberg.
Canberg?
Yes, sir.
Camberg.
Close. Canberg.
Can?
Yes.
Like it C-A or
Yes.
K-A-N? I'm not gonna walk away. Because this fool has no coordination over me.
Okay.
Do you really think you do?
Do you mind just kind of stepping away from me a little bit, please? Thank you. Hey, Joe.
Hey.
I got somebody from Detox coming to kind of talk with you a little bit, okay? I'll kind of hang out here for a minute, all right?
Kelly? Watch this. Watch this, Kelly. Just watch.
Sir, could you step away from me,
No, I
please?
probably won't.
Okay. Could you step away from me, please? I'm asking very nicely.
Your reach is far enough to me.
Okay. Could you step away from me,
No,
please?
I think you're far.
Don't touch me.
Don't touch me.
Okay. You're about ready to be arrested. Step
am
away
I?
from me, please.
Kelly,
Step away from
Kelly,
me,
just
please.
watch him.
All right?
Watch him, Kelly.
Okay, sir, I've asked
Touch
you
me.
to step away
I
from
dare
me.
you to touch me.
All right?
I dare you to
About
touch
ready
me.
to be
I
arrested.
dare you to touch me.
Could you step
Touch
away
me.
from me, please?
Touch me.
All right?
I dare you to touch me. I dare you
Okay.
to touch me. Touch
Could
me.
you step away from me, please?
No, I will stand right here on the sidewalk, public sidewalk, and I dare you to touch me.
Sir,
I
you have
dare you.
nothing.
No,
you have no
dude.
idea
Touch
what's
me.
going on here.
You
Step
have
away
no
from
idea.
me
Touch
and
me.
keep your hands out of
Touch
my
me.
face, please.
Then touch me.
Thank you.
Touch me.
Could you stay?
All of this is being recorded. Touch me right now.
Congratulations.
I'm not going to go to jail. Touch me.
Stay away from me.
Touch me.
Okay?
Touch me. Touch me right now.
Now, right now I'm dealing with the other gentleman here. You're hindering and delaying. No, I don't
I'm
shake hands with you.
What is that?
I'm
what
not
you
shaking
said?
hands with you.
What did you say?
I'm going to ask.
I'm
I said-
hindering an investigation?
No.
Are you
I'm
serious?
dealing with this gentleman here. I'm going to ask you to step away.
You're
Thank
doing-
you.
You know what? You are not a law enforcement
I'm asking you to step away.
You are not a
Thank
law
you.
enforcement officer. Do you understand?
Step away from
Do
me.
you understand that you are not?
Step away
no,
from
don't
me.
touch me. Do you
Step away
understand?
from me.
Do not touch me. Do you understand that you are not a law enforcement investigator?
220, could you start me? Kid? Step away from me.
If you hit me like that again, I will you up. Do you understand that?
Step away.
Touch me.
Step away from
Don't
me. You're under arrest. You're under arrest.
Calm down, dude. I'm under arrest, bitch. Really? Come stop me, bitch.
Charlie 41, I'll be around for that unit. There was an echo customer at that station.
Sprague and post.
Already stood up.
Sir!
Hey, don't go.
Sir, have a seat. Sir, have a seat on the ground.
Don't touch me until I record you.
Have a seat on the ground. Have a seat on the ground.
Do not touch me until
Thank
I
you very
record
much.
Do not touch me.
Get on your stomach.
All right, they're recording me.
Have a seat
Yeah,
on your
they're
stomach.
recording me. Yes,
Put your arms out to
absolutely.
the side. You're under arrest. Put your arms out to the side, sir.
That's all right.
You're under
Hey,
arrest.
Kelly, just stay on the line, okay, Gail? Please stay on the line. They're-
This next video that we're going to show is an example from actually one of our traffic safety officers on his motorcycle heading into the office. And again, it kind of exemplifies the point of view camera systems that we currently have for our motors officers. And then last, and I'll throw a little bit of a disclaimer out there. This last video is from another agency on an incident that happened in the fall of last year with a pretty significant violent interaction with a person. And there's a little bit of a struggle that happens if you're at all squeamish or anything like that. We feel free to look away, but this highlights some of the ideas that while body cameras are great tools for us to have, they're not the final answer for us in everything. Video from them when we have incidents occur is just one piece of evidence that we have to look at in a whole chain of evidence that's available to us when we're presenting this information out to the public and when we're considering the actions of officers. So take a look at this video. And as you watch it, it's going to start with body-worn camera video from one perspective, and then it'll go to surveillance of the overall scene from a high angle. And then we'll see 3 different videos from an arrest scene where there's a struggle with the suspect at the end. And this one doesn't have video or audio to start with, but the audio will kick in here in about 30 seconds.
Out here. Hey! You got my gun. What? You got my gun. Shot fire.
So this surveillance video is synced up to about the same time frames that we saw from the body-worn camera video.
Out here. Hey! You got my gun. What? You got my gun. Shot fire. Harbor Station, shot fire.
And now we go to the scene of the arrest.
Let me see your hands. Get down on the ground. Down on the ground. Get your hands. I got one. Give us your hands, buddy. You're gonna get hurt. He just got his right arm. Okay, I'm off. All right. I'm getting cuffed. I got his right arm. All right. Besides, I think I broke my finger. Everybody be cool. All right, we got him. Okay. Getting cuffed. I think I broke your finger. Let me see your hands.
18th and Pacific.
Let me see your hands. Hands! Down on the ground. Get down on the ground.
And Pacific.
Get the taser out. I got one. Cool. Give me your arm. Give me your arm. Give me your arm. Give me your arm.
Give us the hands, man.
I got one. Getting Frank. Give your hands, buddy. You're gonna get hurt. He's got his right arm. Okay, there you go. There you go. Go. We got the right arm now. I'm getting cuffs. I got cuffs. Yeah. Yep. I got his right arm. All right. We got it. Everybody be cool. All right, we got him. Okay. He's in cuffs. All right. You good? You all right? I think I'm hands, man. I got one. All right. Give it your hands, buddy. You're gonna get hurt. He's got his right arm. Okay, I'm off. Go. We got the right arm now. Okay. I'm getting cuffs. I got his right arm. All right. We got it. Everybody be cool. All right, we got him. Okay. He's in cuffs. 5L20 is code 4 in custody.
So just to kind of sum this up a little bit, we do have a current policy in place. It's found in our policy manual under policy 449, personal or portable video audio recording. And it's been there for several years, mostly because we've already had body camera systems out there in the public. It covers when cameras should be activated, how to identify and preserve the recordings, and how the videos can be released. And that's certainly something that we're going to open up and take a look at as we go to a wider deployment to make sure that we're still meeting those benchmarks and the expectations of the community. In this presentation for the last 40 minutes or so, we looked at some of the research conducted around the use of body-worn cameras, and there's a lot more available out there. The current state of our in-field video recording capabilities. We looked at the features of the systems we think we need in body-worn camera systems, and examples to highlight the limitations and capabilities of body-worn camera video evidence. The main question before the board to consider is whether or not to endorse the replacement and expansion of our body-worn cameras and dash camera program in fiscal year 2021. And with that, I can turn it back over to the chief.
Chief, if you are speaking, you are on mute.
Oh my gosh. Okay, it was my first one, so now I feel like I joined the crowd. Okay, with that said, really just like to open it up to Q&A for Sergeant Erickson or myself if you want the higher level viewpoint of what the community's asked of me. And then we'll go from there. But first, I just want to be able to see what kind of questions you may have.
Great, and we already have a hand. Valerie.
Thank you. And thank you, Sergeant, for that presentation. It was very interesting. I have two questions. So we have, you currently have body cameras and a policy to, when they should be used and when they should be turned on and all of those things. And I'm wondering if you have any data about the officers' compliance with that policy and the officers turning cameras on at, when the policy says that they're supposed to be turned on. So that's my first question.
Sure, and it's a great question. To my knowledge, at this point, we haven't done a review of those. My primary concern with the folks that I supervise are when they're using them on traffic stops. And I can say that we have a very high level of compliance on traffic stops when cameras are being activated and being used, because we want to have that evidence be able to present at a municipal court trial.
Okay. And then the second question I have is more to do with the systems that you were talking about. So you mentioned in your presentation that some of these systems activate, for example, when a taser is drawn or activated. Do any of them activate when an officer draws their firearm?
Yes, in fact, one of the systems that we're considering does have that capability integrated into it. And so if we end up going that direction, we would want to have that as an option with the system.
And Valerie, I do want an opportunity to answer a little bit more on that first one.
Yeah.
As Sergeant Erickson talked about the automation nowadays, because either from lack of compliance or your adrenaline is going and you don't touch the camera. We did have a couple of incidences where we saw with our canine handler that there wasn't video. And through our due diligence of reviewing that and interviewing him, we found that there was a fail-safe in the current technology where they were actually believed that they were touching their camera to activate it, only to find out that it didn't record later. Because again, as they're going off and tracking with the dog. So Commander McDonald had operations at that time, did a very robust in-depth look and found that it was not non-compliance as much as it was a system failure. And we were able to get that technology replaced as soon as we were able to learn that there was a problem. So again, the appealing part about this new technology is it doesn't require that touch point.
Thank you.
Lee, I see your hand.
All right. Question is, so say an officer gets in a situation to where they are just they're dealing with so much stuff. Does anybody else with the systems that are in place right now or what you're looking to get will have or had a chance to remotely access these cameras? So as you guys can tell where each other are with GPS and the radio and what have you, just in case a situation comes about, can somebody remote access to turn on that camera?
Yes and no. So they wouldn't be able to remote access to turn the camera on, but if the camera was already on and recording, a supervisor could log into that and view what the camera is viewing at that time and live view it. So there's a way there if an officer's not responding on the radio after they call for help or something like that, for us to gather information, to pull the GPS location of that camera, to do those kinds of things. But again, the camera has to already be turned on and activated and recording at the time for somebody to remote view it.
Okay, well, maybe that might be something that on the new systems that you guys are trying to get that we can go for you, is to have that capability to where you would have, and only in those certain situations to where it's needed, not just, oh, I just want to see what officer blah, blah, blah doing. You hit the button, but foreseen situations that are going on that you can tell, you'd be able to, a supervisor, lieutenant, what have you, chief, what have you, be able to be on that call looking at what's going on and hit that button just in case the officer couldn't do it himself and be able to get that done. I think that'd be awesome.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Thanks. And Commander McDonald, were you going to respond to Billy's question as well?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that would be included in one of the programs or systems that we're looking at is, let's say you had multiple officers arrive on scene of an incident. They're all wearing body cams. If one officer is engaging in one activity and another one, say, draws their taser, it would activate all of the cameras within a certain distance. Lee, I don't know, what is it, like 30 feet ish, something like that?
Exactly. Yeah, it's about 30 feet.
So to answer Lee's question, it could. Because another officer arrives on scene, they could activate all of the cameras there if, say, the primary officer had arrived and not activated their camera. So like in Sergeant Erickson's presentation, he talked about how cover officers are more likely to activate their cameras. That initial officer may be engaged in something, hasn't had the opportunity to hit their camera. You noticed the officers tap their chest. There's a big button that allows the camera to be activated on those particular systems. And that's why you didn't hear audio for, say, the first period of time in those. Some of the systems that have available, and the one that we prefer, would provide that opportunity for multiple officers on scene. First officer forgets to turn on his video, and the other officers that are arriving would have the ability to activate all the cameras that are there by certain actions. So that is something that is available and that we are looking at in the system that we prefer.
Okay.
And Jimmy Brown.
Yes, thank you. Sergeant Erickson, thank you for the presentation. I thought it was pretty eye-opening. But a couple of questions. One, are there systems where cameras activate automatically upon exiting the vehicle, which in that process would presumably no one sitting at Central Precinct, so to speak, would have to activate the system for them, but upon exiting the vehicle, before using the taser or any other method, the camera would actually come on.
Sure. And the system that we would prefer does have that option. There's any numbers of triggers that we can set for the cameras. But one of the things we like about the system that we've been testing and looking at is one of the triggers for it is if I put my emergency lights on to any stage. There's 3 different stages that we can use for our emergency lights. One is just to flash the rear, so it warns vehicles approaching us from behind that we're doing something on the side of the road. 2 is activates the front facing lights, and then 3 activates more forward facing lights if we have to get somebody's attention. So if we put our emergency lights in our patrol car to any of those levels, they will automatically activate the in-car video system, as well as any body-worn cameras that are assigned with that officer who's driving that vehicle. So that's a feature that we already have available to us right now, but we can look at whether or not triggers like opening the door could trigger the cameras as well. We just that would create a lot of extra video for the amount of times the officer's in and out of their car. If they're just going to break or going to a meal or something like that, there'd be a lot more videos created because the systems have a 30 or 60-second pre-event video buffer that's recorded every time those cameras are turned on. So that portion you had where there's video but no audio to go with it, that's the pre-event recorder, and we can set it for up to 2 minutes or 30 seconds, however we want. So that would create a lot of video there. That's just extra data that we have to store.
I think one thing to point out is privacy laws too. If you just step out of your car and you're at something that's a HIPAA and you step out and it starts recording, now you're violating HIPAA law. So you got to be careful of what you're recording. We had that problem with the schools too, is what we can record in the schools and what we can't.
Thank you, Officer. Justin Lowe.
Hi there, and thank you, Sergeant Erickson, for that presentation. My question kind of builds off of Jimmy's question that he had asked, primarily because I'm wondering about officers who say maybe, number one, by themselves, and then on foot, for example, away from, say, a trigger source that might be the patrol car and the lights, and for an indefinite amount of time, to where, as you mentioned, you wouldn't be recording and storing that much data at any given moment. And say they came across an individual that they had to either engage or potentially restrain. I'm curious as to if there are any other automated triggers or mechanisms that you haven't shared already that might be present for a scenario like that.
So there wouldn't be anything automated to activate the cameras in that circumstance. The officer could activate it manually by double tapping the button that's on the front of the camera. But the 2 automated triggers that would go with the officer away from the patrol vehicle are their taser. So if they draw and activate their taser, the taser sends out that signal that goes out about 30 feet and will turn on all body cameras within its range, as well as if they draw their firearm out of the holster, that would send out that signal and activate the cameras. So those are the only two automated systems that I'm aware of with any of the programs out there that we would be purchasing.
Okay, so in the event that they encountered an individual and say they did not attempt to either draw their taser or their firearm, they would have to rely on the double tap to the chest.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Chief, would you like to address those comments?
Yeah, thank you. Nick did jump in, but unlike some of the other agencies, to include my former agency of Tacoma, the union is not fighting us, which is huge. A lot of agencies have to overcome that hurdle. One, we've had this system in place, so they're used to it, and they are actually asking for it. And one example from kind of the head of the organization that was helpful, not from this agency, we just helped to investigate it, but an officer to many of the Washington County agencies. This officer encountered a female during which time later she alleged that the officer sexually assaulted her. And it's just his word against hers. However, he did have body camera, and they could prove from the start of the call to the end of it, that camera was on the entire time and showed that you could actually clear the officer instead of just saying a not sustained and always leaving that air of uncertainty. They were able to prove that it in fact did not happen. And so when you talk about the officers, the majority of them desire this for many reasons, but also in case of allegations made against them, they're looking for something besides their word to help maybe validate that it didn't happen, or it happened the way they alleged that it did. And Nick, I don't know if you want to say anything more from the association side of it.
No, I think as an association, we're not against body cameras. We know that for the full 15 years I've been here, we've used the in-car video. And so we're used to being recorded. And nowadays, we go out on a call. I carry a body camera because my video in my car has been taken out. So I have a body camera, but not only am I expecting I'm recording, anytime we're out on a call, we're expecting other people are recording too. So it doesn't really bother us. So we're not opposed to body cameras at all.
Thank you both. And John Trin, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. A couple of questions. First question will be in terms of the technology that you're buying. I assume that it will capture night vision, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, the cameras do have better vision than the human eye, so they will see in low light conditions. They see at a wider angle simply because they're fixed on the officer's body instead of moving with the head. So they do have the capability of recording in low light.
Great. And the second question is really related to Officer Nunn's comment regarding HIPAA and whatnot like that. When you deal with people with a disability, mental health, behavioral health, that kind of stuff, are you then restricted from turning on the camera?
Not necessarily, no. In fact, anytime we have an encounter with the public, we have the option to record that because we're in the public. And so we would, there's certain laws that require us to record in certain circumstances when we're conducting investigatory stops or probable cause arrests and things like that. If we have body worn cameras, we're required to record in those circumstances. In other cases, if it's a benefit, we can record in them, but we have to, in any circumstance, we have to advise everybody present that we are recording both audio and video so that everyone is put on notice. And it's not like we're trying to surreptitiously record communication, but we're just trying to record an accurate account of the encounter.
And the last question was, as a citizen, can I ask not to be recorded?
You certainly can, and we would have to take that into advisement. We would have to look at the circumstances and figure out how important it is for us to record this conversation versus your privacy interests. And if it would be at the officer's discretion. But if you request that we don't record you, we would have to take that under consideration.
Thank you.
Valerie?
Yeah, I'm sure Shelby can comment, but Oregon is not a dual consent state when it comes to recording. So my question had more to do with evidentiary standards. So, when Commander McDonald was talking, it occurred to me, does the current system require that there be some sort of human intervention to take the recording off of a camera and put it into storage? And would proposed systems automatically upload to the cloud? Because I would think that one of the advantages of a system would be that it automates that process. And so I was wondering if the systems that you're looking at look at that.
So yeah, both the systems we currently have and the systems we're looking at are automated for uploading those to where they're going to be stored. So our in-car video is stored on servers that the city of Tigard maintains. And when we pull into the station, our cars connect to a wireless access point, and the video is pulled off of the car and stored onto the server where it's accessible as evidence. For the body-worn camera systems, when we come into the station and we put the camera into the dock to recharge the batteries in the camera, that video is now uploaded to the cloud. We have the opportunity in between for both of those systems to add notes like case numbers or call types or evidence types and those kinds of things. But other than that, we can't delete any of the videos. We can't alter any of the videos. We can only add to the metadata so that contextual information that's stored with the video to help others find it if they need it in the future. So it is fairly well automated. And in the systems that we're looking at going to in the future, it's again automated to the point where we can do that in the field. We don't have to come back to the station to do it. We can either send those and have them submitted up manually, or we can wait, and after a certain amount of time, they'll automatically be uploaded to the cloud for us.
Great,
Chief. Thank you so much. Yeah. Chief, would you like to add to that?
Yes, please. And one of the things that stops a lot of agencies is just the resources it takes to manage this, especially from evidentiary, as you asked, Valerie, because while it can be uploaded automatic, there is a touch point with the property and evidence personnel that will send it out to the courts and handle it all that way. And I just wanted to remind everybody that through the public safety levy, we just by the sheer increase in officers and intuitively that they would create more evidence, we do have a third property and evidence personnel. And so once we hire that person under the levy, it will be more than enough to sustain adding body-worn cameras for everybody. So just wanted to share that. And also the levy in the equipment pays for the body-worn cameras of those officers who are hired under the levy, and that's what also decreases the ask to.
Oh, Chief, you muted near the end of your comment.
With the levy, we were able to get 9 of the body-worn cameras paid for by the levy. And so that's another reason why it decreases the impact to the general fund, is the levy does support body-worn cameras for the new officers.
Thank you. Commander McDonald?
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly that in terms of like the officer support, one of the things that I've noticed, in fact, when I was in operations before I switched, sorry, I'm going to move a little bit because the sun is starting to come through the window there. I had several officers come to me and ask me, hey, when are we going to get body cameras? It's something that a lot of officers actually would really like. And they're, as you can imagine, the newer generation of officers is much more accustomed to technology. And Sergeant Erickson mentioned our dash cams are in the vehicles are over 10 years old. And I don't know if any of you have like looked at your iPhone 10 years ago, or did it even exist 10 years ago? I'm not sure. That tells you how far technology has come, and that's the technology that we're trying to deal with in our vehicles alone. So the technology, especially for things like quality of video, but then also cloud storage and the automation to upload, has come light years in the time that we've had, at least dash cams. The body cams themselves, we've been able to get a little bit more modern with the ones that we currently deploy, but this will give us an opportunity beyond anything else that we've ever been able to experience. And then on the question of like evidence, we have really solid policies on that, not to mention the fact that there's state law and Oregon administrative rules that surround a lot of those issues. So not only do we have policies about it, it's dictated to us by state law as well. So a lot of that gets managed for us by law, although our policies are generally more restrictive, meaning that we have a higher standard than what the law requires.
Thank you, Commander. Jimmy Brown.
Just a couple of questions. Chief, are there federal resources available to offset costs to purchase?
We have looked at a few grants and nothing that jumps at us at this time, but they are available. I know Beaverton did a couple years ago. And some of them, Beaverton would share, please don't. It's the management of that budget, but we have looked and there is not any currently available. And since this is a year to year, and I think like a 5-year lease, we have the opportunity, should one become available, to possibly look at that to help.
Chief, you muted again.
I actually think it's my internet connection that's cutting out, because it's telling me I have bad connection. So we've looked for grants and there isn't one currently. We'll continue to look, and as long as it doesn't violate the supplanting rules, we will apply if we're able to down the road.
Okay, and then one other question. Sergeant Erickson, you showed some research from some of the other departments out there relative to people's perceptions of the BWC's body-worn cameras. What does, or is there any data from City of Tigard residents relative to interactions involving body-worn camera? Do we have any comments, favorable or otherwise, received from Tigard residents?
Sure. Well, I can tell you in the spring of last year, we did receive a lot of phone calls to the department at various levels, including 3 people who somehow found my telephone number specifically to ask what the current state of body-worn cameras was for us and to encourage us to consider getting them when I had to tell them we don't have them. But in terms of data on past performance and stuff like that, I don't think we've done a survey or a study to look at that, mostly because it is a fairly limited deployment. A lot of the camera interactions are going to be from traffic stops, but that's a lot of commuter traffic and not necessarily Tigard residents that we're interacting with. Whereas if we're going to talk with somebody in their house on a call, that's not getting recorded, and there's no body camera interface there for us to study that and see what the reactions are.
Thank you. Michael O'Brien.
When video started being more widespread in Oregon, video use in police vehicles and on body cams, I think judges expected to see the evidence in trials a lot more often, and that has happened, of course, but not on the scale that I think we anticipated. And of course, dash cams are pretty stable images, but as the presentation pointed out, a lot of what's going on is outside the scope of the lens, so you're not seeing much of anything in terms of what's going on there. With body cams and helmet cams, you're not getting the kind of GoPro image you expect to see when you look at a downhill skier or something. You've seen, as we saw in the presentation also, you're seeing some very jerky images, and it's really hard to tell what's going on. So the utility to the officer is limited at trial, and also, of course, to the defendant. It is very useful in a lot of cases just to show traffic conditions, weather conditions, to show so that you can hear the conversation, the audio portion afterwards, where sometimes some useful exchanges occur between the officer and the defendant. But that, I don't know how you deal with that technical problem of the jerky, sporadic images, even though the technology is improving greatly, I'm sure.
Thank you, Michael. John Trin?
Yes, my question is really just a general question regarding training opportunities. I know that in terms of when we deal with Black communities, people of color, whatnot like that, the way that's, I'm not saying in terms of the Tiger PD, but we see in terms of officers use different languages or treat people differently. Would this be an opportunity if body cams are worn as a way to train officers in terms of if there's a bias towards a certain population, or training in terms of those racial training opportunity for police officers, if that's the case, in viewing some of the footage?
Absolutely, yeah. It just gives us a richer environment and a richer resource for those training opportunities. When we have those videos that we can highlight good or bad performance to make improvements, we're more likely to capture that when we have more of the body cameras out there. So yes, specific to your question, I think if we found those examples to where we can make improvements on how we're interacting with members of the community in any kind of circumstance, that would be there for us to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Justin?
John Trin had already asked part of this question, but I guess another thing I'd like to add in terms of future intentions with opportunities to collect data and for training, I'm wondering, and I'm just asking this for the record because I presume this is the intention, but are you all planning on then collecting data for compliance and other things regarding your officers and the use of body cams if you are able to secure this funding and the body cams themselves?
I think that's a yes. We want to make sure that our officers are using the systems appropriately. And if we set a policy that says under these circumstances, you will activate your cameras, and we can go back and look and see to the number of incidences that we have match up to the amount of camera usage that we have, then we can take a look at that and figure out, okay, are we missing the mark somewhere? Do we need to make improvements? This is very similar to any kind of new skill set that we're going to train on, where we'll provide the training, we'll do a lot of indoctrination into the skill, but if we don't maintain that skill by periodically checking it and then auditing it to make sure it's working as we expected, it's just kind of worthless to us. So to make the most out of this, we're going to have to continually review our usage of it and make sure that we're hitting those benchmarks that we're expecting to see.
Wonderful, thank you. And I actually did have one more additional question, if that's all right. You brought up earlier that there is a system that would provide seamless integration between body-worn cams and then dash cams. I'm wondering if you have any specific data or any testimonials from other police departments or other agencies that have used those, and what the merits are of those systems are. I imagine they're positive.
And generally speaking, yes. And we actually see that here. We do have one of the in-car video systems that we're looking at to pair with the body camera systems that we're looking at. And when we have incidents like a DUI, we're able to see that the driver behavior as they're operating their vehicle going down the road from the in-car video. And then you get to see the person contact with the officer's body-worn camera there as they're investigating the DUI. And then both those videos get packaged and sent for prosecution to the district attorney's office as one seamless event. So they don't have to try and piece together from multiple different sources. It's all there from one source, and it just looks more professional and clean.
Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie?
So, I mean, I think the discussion that we're having today relates to the technology and whether this group supports and whether our community supports the ask, which is should the investment be made in upgrading these systems. And from my perspective, I think everybody here is very supportive of that. And the folks that we've talked to, at least that I've talked to in the community, are very supportive of that. But I do want to, at some point, and I think the chief made a very good point when she broke this up into two separate items, that I do think that we need to revisit the policies that surround body worn cameras, because the situations that I'm concerned about are the George Floyd type situations, right? Where, you know, there wasn't a gun drawn, there wasn't a taser activated, but there was still a situation that bystanders caught on camera, and but for that, you know, we wouldn't know about it. So, you know, so I want to make sure that we have a discussion about policies that is, you know, respectful of the officers, that is respectful of the public, and that serves the criminal justice system. And that it serves our communities. And I think that, you know, Justin's comments and some of the other comments we've heard today about improving relationships within communities of color, you know, this can be a really positive step towards that. But I think that we have to incorporate that into our discussions about the policies as well. So that's what I wanted to say.
Absolutely. And while tonight we will be voting on whether to endorse or not endorse the purchase and expansion of the body cam program, the following meeting, and even multiple meetings, depending on how the conversation goes, we will be specifically addressing policies and procedures of body cams.
Right. And I think that, you know, the representatives from Tigard Police Department and Judge O'Brien, you know, that we've talked to have been very supportive of having those discussions, you know, but I want to make sure that we don't get derailed into the policy discussions when we're talking about the technology.
Thank you. And Danny.
I just want to agree with Valerie on this. The technical pieces of equipment purchasing is clearly an important feature within the department. But I also think that, you know, we really need to examine policies in place, specifically around when equipment is activated, and then to be able to talk about the uses of this technology in the course of examining police activity. One of the things that is concerning to me, coming from my own personal experience with the department, is having an officer say my equipment was faulty, but upon further examination, there was nothing wrong with the equipment. It was the officer chose not to activate the dash cam. And only through discovery did we find that particular piece out. And so, you know, I'm definitely concerned about the policy processes that are in place, and whether or not our officers are in fact following that policy more than the percentage of time that the Arizona State study showed. And I think if I read that correctly, it appeared that less than 47% of the activity was actually being recorded on the policies based out of whatever department they had been doing their research on.
Thank you, Jimmy. And Danny.
Yes, thank you. I think I just kind of wanted to put a bit of devil's advocate and just make it clear. I think what Valerie's mentioned is I'm in agreement with it. It seems like we're all kind of on board. This seems to be like a good thing, right? To have body cameras, and I guess I was expecting hear a little bit more from on the flip side of things in the presentation of what are the cons or the limitations, you know, of cameras. And through the questions and comments that I've heard here, I've kind of heard some of that, like from Michael, about kind of the jerkiness of the video and like how useful that could be. I think Chief Kathy mentioned the management of the data, right, and of the tech, and then we mentioned, of course, the privacy laws concern. So, are there any other areas that we need to consider in terms of limitations or cons, if I can put it that way?
I think one of the things that we're going to be on guard on is just an over reliance on the technology. We want it to be there, but it's not the end all be all for us. It's just another piece of evidence in the string of evidence that we have available to us when we're looking at these things. So some people may feel that body worn cameras will tell the full story for us, but from my experience, and as you saw in that third video example, it doesn't. It's just part of the whole story, and we have to look at everything when we're reviewing things. So I mean that's a limitation. But I think the biggest one is what Chief McAlpine talked about, of just the amount of information and data this creates for us that we have to now manage and manage responsibly for the community, so that it's there for prosecution, it's there for transparency, it's there for any of those needs that we have, it's there for training and making sure that we take care of that appropriately. That's a big ask, but we will have the resources in place to do that and make that happen.
And then the other part, if I may, is because if I understood correctly, this is asking for an increase in like the police department's budget, right? So that we can cover the expenses for the cameras. And so where's that money going to be pulled from, or like where is that money not going to go to anymore, if that works that way? Like I'm still kind of new in understanding kind of how this works in all the different systems and across the departments in the city. And but yeah, that's kind of a question, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. And I'd have to defer to the chief or to Commander McDonald to answer that one.
Yes, specifically, I believe the answer is going to be in this Q3, and Councillor Newton may be able to also jump in, is that it will come out of probably our reserves or unspent on those Q3.
Thank you. Commander McDonald or Liz, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I just first of all wanted to echo what Valerie said. I'm in agreement about the policies. I see these cameras as a tool that's going to help us get to where we want to get to as a community related to public safety services to our community. And I think, so one thing is I want to make sure the tool that we purchase is going to be adaptable to what our community wants in terms of policing. So it's a tool, but I do agree the most important aspect of this is the policies in terms of how those come together, the review, making sure that the policies that are in place reflect what our community wants in terms of public safety services. So I don't want to have a situation where we're supporting as a group, putting on my committee hat or board hat, not my council hat, that precludes our ability to modify or make recommendations to policies that are important moving forward to reflect what the community wants in terms of policing. In terms of the funding piece, I will tell you that the recommendations of the Public Safety Board moving forward for the next year and a half are a priority for the council. I'm not saying that we're going to take money out of park maintenance to provide funding for body cameras, but it's a choice that we'll make. And unanimously as a group, where we can, we are going to be prioritizing the recommendations of the Public Safety Advisory Board. So I think it was Sergeant Erickson said it's probably going to come from reserves, which is technically true. We won't be literally pulling money from another program. We'll just be prioritizing spending these funds. So I just wanted to echo what most of you have said about the importance of the policies and how I, as a board member and now as a councilor, view this as a tool that we can use to make sure that we're providing the public safety services that our community wants. So.
Thank you, Liz. And Commander?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back. I think it was Valerie that made a comment. We've had a lot of comments about policy, but one of the things that is already but will be more robustly included in policy revisions is the requirement to use it during any enforcement action. So, for example, currently our dash cams are activated anytime the lights are turned on, like Sergeant Erickson explained. And we actually had to go back and we had to write a directive a few months back because we couldn't fix some of the systems. Officer Nunn mentioned that he wears a body camera because the camera has actually been removed from the vehicle that he drives because we cannot get parts for the system. So there is a requirement. There will be a more robust requirement that officers use the system, and by giving it to everyone universally that's out on the street, it will become a much easier thing for us as the police department to police ourselves. It's much more difficult now because the system we have is failing at best, and we have such a limited number of officers with the body cams that are using those. And those that do use them, as the chief mentioned earlier, they were doing what they thought they needed to do, but yet what we identified after I went back and did some research, we had not provided them the proper quality of equipment. We rectified that, and that problem has since been taken care of. But that's what happens when you kind of band-aid things together and you try and have a program that isn't all-encompassing, and you've got different systems, and it's fraught with areas for problems to occur. So by having a uniform system across the board, it will make it much less likely that those problems will be undetected. We'll notice them immediately if they come up. If they come up, we're pretty confident the new technology is going to be so much better that it will solve a lot of the vast majority of those issues. So, but by having everyone carrying them, it makes our job of holding people accountable that much easier. Because if everybody has it and the expectation is the same for everyone, then there's no room for question. Whereas it is now, some systems work, some of them work properly, some of them only part of it works. The video works, but the audio doesn't. Some people are wearing a body cam and they don't have a dash cam. It's, as you can imagine, it's a management nightmare for those of you that are in management positions. So we want to get better at it. And this is the answer to do that, is to use the newest, latest technology and to automate these systems so that it makes it less of a thought process for the end user, for the officer out on the street. Some of it's going to be done automatically if they do certain things. Some of it, they can just hit that button and off they go. And it will make their lives much easier, and it'll make those of us that have to review the actions of our officers that much easier when it comes time to do that.
Thank you, Commander. And I've got Justin and then Jimmy, and then we're going to end the discussion for this evening. So Justin?
Thank you. And thank you, Commander McDonald, for just giving a very robust explanation about how this will actually help with transparency and accountability, which I think is very compatible with the points that Valerie raised in regards to looking at policy and making sure that they're in lockstep. I'm kind of looking ahead right now. This is a question to staff because Valerie's comments have made me very hyper vigilant of this now. But when will our opportunity be to discuss and review policy regarding this? I know that we're going to discuss the endorsement part first, but I see that we also have on April 12th and April 26th that we will still have body cams on our agenda.
Yes, we will be discussing this for the next couple meetings. We'll not be putting it off for some time in the future. It'll be an immediate next step.
Okay, that's wonderful to know. Thank you.
No problem. And Jimmy, you are wrapping us up.
Okay. So I just as I'm listening to the discussion here about the technology and public policy aspects of body cams, I want to frame this for me that we look at this and focus ourselves as much as possible around how we, through this technology, will be able to improve the lived experience of all people in Tigard. That is the only reason in my world why we are even discussing body cams. Yes, I know it can certainly provide some cover for officers, and it certainly is an accountability factor, and it certainly is a transparency factor. But the bedrock of this is how do we ensure that through this, we are going to improve the lived experience of all people in Tigard. And I speak from that perspective as someone who has participated in the technology that Tigard has. And I want to talk about that from the perspective as a Black man living in Tigard. I don't want the situation to occur where some person of color or any resident of Tigard is having to have the community's cameras be the source of all information or all visualization of something happening as they have interactions with Tigard police. So, you know, framing this for me, and by having this technology, it will ensure that the lives of all people in Tigard are treated equitably and fairly as we, you know, move ourselves forward in a technologically oriented world. So tonight, the board has been asked to vote on the following items. Public Safety Advisory Board endorses the replacement and expansion of the body-worn and dash camera program in fiscal year 2021. And the Public Safety Advisory Board continues their review of the city's body-worn and dash camera policies simultaneously with the new equipment purchase. So, you know, that's obviously been part of our discussion tonight, and I have totally enjoyed this robust discussion. I hope that those folks out in the community who are watching us tonight can see that the work that we do is planful. The work that we do is oriented toward improving the lives of the community as a whole, that we will tackle issues that may not necessarily feel comfortable in totality, but we are going to tackle those. So I would like to call for a motion either on those items individually or together. Certainly it's up to the board as to how we want to proceed with that. But I'd like to entertain a motion to endorse the expansion of the body-worn cameras and agree to hold conversations on this program as it is expanded and implemented to help shape policy and procedure going forward.
So moved.
A second.
We have a first and a second.
I have number three, third.
So I'm going to interject on how the voting is going to go. So because this is the first vote of the board, and we will be submitting an actual recommendation to the city council shortly, what we're going to do is capture each person's A or nay, as well as part of the work plan, we're capturing individual comments. So if you'd like to add any context to your vote, this would be the time, and this will all be packaged up and included in the city council recommendation as we go through the roll call. Does that sound good?
Thank you.
Wonderful. So Commander McDonald.
Yes.
Officer Nunn.
Yes.
Shelby Rahala.
Yes.
Michael O'Brien.
Yes, but I'd like to add a quick comment, which is that ordinarily judges are hesitant to get involved in areas of policy that might conceivably be litigated in our courtroom. But to me, this affects the integrity of the justice system and the administration of justice, and I wholeheartedly support it. I don't think there's any restraint in my ability to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Newton.
Yes, and I would like to echo what Jimmy Brown said about setting the context for the policy discussion moving forward. You were much more eloquent than I was when I was trying to explain that I feel that this is an important tool, but I think that moving forward with our policies, I agree with you. It needs to, that context is important, and I hope we keep that in mind, at front of mind as we're moving forward. So thank you for that. and yes.
Thank you. John Trin,
Yes.
Jimmy Brown,
Yes.
Lee Landers,
Yay! Yes.
Patty Lofgren,
Yes.
Justin Lowe,
Yes.
Danny Rauda,
Yes.
and Valerie Sasaki.
Yes.
Wonderful. The motion carries, Jimmy.
Excellent. Thank you all for your votes. Most especially, thank you all for the connection and being fully engaged in place with this discussion. Again, you know, these may not, to those who are watching, these may not seem to be tough discussions or tough decisions, but the reality is we live in an age where information, visualizations, visual aids are on every corner, whether it's dash cameras or cameras on a light pole or someone who happens to have an Android or an iPhone. We get information almost instantly or as fast as somebody can upload it to the net. And in so doing, you know, we want to make sure that the technology we receive is used in a manner that will ensure that everyone is treated in an equitable and fair manner. And that we are not afraid of either accountability, transparency, or training, all of which are important in any of our public service organizations. So, Kim, do we have any outstanding items that we need to look at relative to looking at the upcoming meeting snapshot, or are those elements further?
There is one outstanding item, which is the talking points. Those are with Eduardo and will be sent out after this meeting. So you will be seeing those. And I will share the snapshot, but I see a couple hands first. So, Patty.
Yes, Eduardo, I sent him an email. We were going to work on a draft of the email to send out for those of us who were contacting members of the community. We were going to draft something that we all could use as we reached out to the different community organizations that we were contacting. And I know I said last meeting that I sent them links to read about the Public Safety Advisory Board on the website. I also sent out Chief McAlpine's essay she put on there when they started getting jurors in Minneapolis. But I still think before I reach out to some of the other organizations, it would be really nice to have that draft that we all sort of agree on. I'm wondering where we are in that.
I wasn't aware we were going to create a draft email. I knew we were going to do the talking points, which are a robust explanation of what the Public Safety Advisory Board's mission and vision and our composition and rules, and that will be coming after this meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yep. And Valerie.
Okay, so I had my hand up and then I put it down because that was my question, is where are the talking points? But I did want to note that we did get a piece of public comment for this meeting that I think came in at some point in March, in March, from Mr. Antonelli, who is asking about reaching out to the community as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and say that, I think our plan is to do that after we have those talking points. But if Mr. Antonelli wants to reach out, I believe he's involved with the Tigard Times publication too. So if he wants to reach out, I think Kim or Commissioner Newton or anybody would be a good person to reach out to. But, we definitely want to engage our communities. And I have reached out to Apano. Obviously, given the events of this last week, they've been concerned with other things. But, I look forward to having other discussions with them about this.
Sounds Sounds good. And just to clarify, it is a different Michael Antonelli with the Tigard Times. And Danny.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue with Valerie mentioning Apano, and then in the beginning, Chief mentioning the whole situation in Atlanta. And I know for me and my community, we have a large Vietnamese community, and I've been just trying to reflect on what's our response as a faith community. And I was really kind of looking forward to having a more intentional conversation about that situation as a board. I know we have very diverse community members here, and might be hearing different things and that is connected to that situation. And so I kind of just wanted to throw that out there to, I mean, I don't know if we have the time to even talk about that, but I would just love to hear from folks, like what you're hearing, what are people feeling locally around this situation? Is there things that, you know, as a board that we need to take a stance on, you know? So yeah, just kind of throwing that out there.
Thank you. We are short on time, but we do have time for a couple of comments. If anyone would like to address that. Valerie.
So obviously you can't control crazy people, right? But you know, I think where it has where the event had resonance for me and a lot of the folks I talked to was that in addition to the horrific event that happened, there was the perception that the police spokesperson who was involved was inappropriate in how he described the shooter's rationale as just having a bad day, and not acknowledging that it, in all likelihood, it was a hate crime. So, you know, I think that the discussions that we've been having here are really positive, and I really appreciate the police officers and police leadership who are involved in this, because I don't think that that type of response would happen here. And, you know, so I come to this having struggled a lot with this week. And, but again, I think it was an illustration of how having good discussions about this can avoid a re-victimization of a community, which is essentially what it felt like for all of us.
Thank you for sharing. And Chief?
Yeah, hopefully my connection goes well enough. Just prior to Atlanta, I had been contacted by Dolly, who is also on the Asian committee, and had reached out to me wanting to know if we had had any reported hate crimes against our Asian community. So we had done a deep dive into that since the pandemic was declared. We had no reported documented incidences in Tigard, and I had shared that with her just before the Atlanta. But we also know, acknowledging not everybody comes forward and can experience you know, hatred. We did thereafter, and we did get some great thank yous later when we asked our patrol officers to just go into businesses that are operated by our Asian community. We did watch some of our Asian youth that were playing pickleball, and we just watched over them and doing what little that we can do. But just as a board, if you're asking, we did not have any reported documented incidences. And of course, we'll be very vigilant should anybody come forward expressing such.
Thank you. And Justin, if you'd like to wrap us up.
Thank you. And thank you, Danny, for bringing this up. I think especially because this speaks to the conversations we've had before about carving out space to talk about community issues, and specifically for communities of color to be able to voice their experiences and their feelings. And I think that this is very timely to be able to discuss this. And pardon me if I stammer during this, because this has been actually a very difficult time in going through this and processing this. And I just want to say this, especially for our community leaders here and for our community who are watching. I have never struggled with the ability to walk outside by myself, and either at night or to go on a grocery trip by myself. And that speaks to privilege especially compared to stories we've heard in the past here, of me not experiencing that in the past. But for the past 2 months, and then as of last week, it's been difficult to walk down a street and hear loud sounds or someone yelling. And I've been worried for my housemates who go on walks or runs alone, who are also identify as Asian. And it's been very hard. And I think especially for folks who are survivors of racial violence, this past week has brought up a lot of that. And also people who have experienced similar experiences, who might not identify as Asian, are experiencing similar traumas and reliving them. And so I would ask for folks to be vigilant as community members, to check in on folks, but also to be aware while you're out in the community and to look after people and to speak up when you hear things that shouldn't be said, and racialized phrases and epithets that might bolster this current hateful environment that we're living in right now. And to just be just be vigilant and be mindful and caring towards those around you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing, Justin. And Jimmy, I think we can conclude our meeting tonight.
Yes. Wow. Justin, Valerie, Danny, thank you all so much. These are hard times. And we continue to work with each other and for each other and for our communities. And we will continue to move forward. I would like to mention that tomorrow evening, the 23rd, is the city council meeting. And we will be there at 8:20 to make the presentation to the Tigard City Council on our work plan and topic schedule. And I want to invite all of you who are able to connect into that particular meeting, so the council can in fact hear beyond just myself and Justin and Abdi, to share our experiences that we all have had in the time period that we have been together. So I wanted to use that moment to just close us out. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right.
And number 3 again.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, any opposition to our adjourning the meeting tonight? Hearing none, then I will call our meeting number 7 adjourned. And I want to thank all of you who participated as board members and for our local community members that have chimed in or looked in to watch the proceedings. Thank you very much and look forward to continuing our discussions in the coming weeks.
See you in 3 weeks.
3 weeks.